Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums, and in the co-captain's chair once again, Mr. Grant Arthur from Grant's Rock Warehouse and the Contrarians. What's happening, my friend?
Hey, I'm good. Nice to see you. Nice to be here. Nice to talk some Jo Jo Gunne,
Some
Pete.
Jo Jo Gunne, a band that pretty new to me. I mean, I've been into the other bands that these guys came from, but I never listened to Jo Jo Gunne until a couple of months ago, and pretty surprised at how good this catalog is for a fairly obscure band, right? I mean, Jay Ferguson obviously is the known name here, um, singing for Spirit on a number of albums, and of course he ventured into yacht rock territory with a couple big hits later on in the 70s. But this Jo Jo Gunne band kind of burst on the scene after he and Mr. Mark Andes left Spirit, and they did 4 studio albums before breaking up. They got back together many years later. They did another album in like 2005, which is basically just a reworking and re-recording of some of their more notable tracks and a couple new songs. We're not going to include that one in the ranking today. We're just going to do those 4 albums, which are Jo Jo Gunne, Bite Down Hard, Jumpin' the Gun, and So Where's the Show?
Yeah, I was going to say that album where they regrouped. I'm not exactly sure who's in that group, but I sampled that record and it's like a totally different animal. And
Yeah,
it doesn't fit in with this catalog. And
even the songs they redo don't sound like the original versions.
it's not very good.
And Jay's vocals really changed a lot. Like he sounds like Mark Knopfler. Okay.
Well, I mean,
Agrees, I guess.
things happen as you get older, but
Yeah.
there is no doubt that Jay sounds great on this stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And of course, Shakedown Cruise and all his solo stuff, he sounds great, but things change.
Yeah,
But this is a strong catalog.
very
Even
strong.
though these guys didn't really sell anything, I
No.
don't think Spirit really sold anything either. Let's be
No, that's
honest.
the surprising thing, right? Everybody thinks Spirit was like kind of this big groundbreaking band, and they may have been very influential, but they didn't sell a ton of records either. So
Yeah, but I was listening to an online interview. Redbeard, the interviewer Redbeard has some show. He did a show about the 40th or was it the 50th? I don't know, but there was an interview with Jay Ferguson. He was reflecting on the whole career of Jo Jo Gunne. And he was just saying, yeah, they just started jamming with Mark's brother Matt. It kind of connected because he was saying he was such a good guitar player. And you being a guitar player, you know how he's a great slide player.
oh yeah, there's a
Good
lot of
player.
on this. Yeah.
And they just started jamming and it just clicked so well. And then when they brought Curly Smith in, which we'll talk about Curly, a phenomenal drummer on his own.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about chops. It all kind of gelled, and then they basically, Mark and Jay put in the resignation for Spirit and said, "We're going to do this."
Yeah.
And that really ended that. Of course they kept going, but it wasn't quite the same.
Wasn't quite the same. No, those classic Spirit albums are classic for a reason. So.
Right.
So
But
again, we got 4 records. We're going to rank them as we like them. My guess is Grant and I will be pretty different in our rankings here because I will say this is very hard because all 4 of these albums are pretty similarly very good. There's no like here's the dud, here's the gem in the catalog. They're all kind of very solid. And I do want to apologize to folks watching now. I am like really under the weather, but I'm like soldiering through this. I don't know if I got the flu or something. I'm not quite sure.
oh, you've got the flu.
I think that's what I have. Yeah. So, just came out of nowhere Friday late afternoon, just like boom. I'm like, okay, great, here we go. So, but the show must go on here at Sea of Tranquility, and
You're a professional. So.
I try, man, I try. So, all right, Grant, you're number 4.
Okay, my number 4. Now, my lineup. I was talking to Pete right before the show that I totally revamped it, and I made additional notes because it was driving me crazy because I like all these records. There's not a clinker among them, okay? But there's one record that really took off for me, and it's going to be contrarian, but that's okay. That's the way we roll. And I was telling Pete, my ranking's probably going to be totally different. And people are probably going, why are you ranking this so low? Because, I look at a lot of things. I'm looking at sequencing, production, songwriting. there's a lot that goes into a great record. How did it sell? We've been over this before, but there's a lot that I try to take a look at. And based on that, I'm going against everything. So my number four is going to be Bite Down Hard from 1973. Now you're probably going, really? Well, it's a second album. We lost, yes, we lost Mark. He left. Evidently, what I understood from that situation, because he was only on the first album.
Yeah, exactly.
And, he brought great bass, of course, great vocals. But on this record, he's not on it. We get a new bass player, Jimmy Randall, which I have to say is very good.
He's great.
He's great. It probably made the band better, but I think we might be missing a little bit of Mark's background vocals, because I think that vocal blend of the original band was really great. But I don't think we're really missing anything. Tracks. So basically, okay, this is why I don't like there it goes. This is why I'm not that crazy about this record. I'm crazy about it, but not. Okay, this is the thing. This record has a lot tighter production. It doesn't have as much air around like the debut has. The debut has a lot of breathing room. This seems like it's kind of compressed, kind of muddy. It's like I have to struggle to hear the instrumentation and pull things out more. When I listen to something, I just want it to kind of flow, and the songs aren't any worse. They might be a little bit better. It's probably tighter songwriting, but there's more energy. This record, they're also starting to rock out more. And as we find when we talk through this catalog, they rock out more and more on each record, the way I look at it, until they get to that final record, which they're rocking out pretty hard.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to talk about that. But I don't think the production here is great, but you still have great performances. And I really don't miss Mark so much. I don't notice him. You got to have Jay, but I think we can get by without Mark, even though some people I've read, oh, that's a big loss. It's all right. They're still a great band. Ready Freddy, a great opener, kind of sets the tone for the record because it's way heavier than anything on the first record.
Yeah.
I hear this and I'm going, wow, Gunne is ready to rock. Roll Over Me, that sounds like an obvious single to me. You got a little bit of synthesizer on it. You got great slide from Mark. God, what a great player. It's catchy. 60 Minutes Ago, very up-tempo. But this is where I really started to notice that there's not much air around it. It just feels kind of congested. And I don't know what happened. I mean, a lot of people might not notice, but, I kind of noticed. It's not, this isn't one of the albums that I really returned to because it's just not quite what I want to hear. God, everything's good as far as songwriting goes. Because Jay Ferguson and the combination of everybody, you can tell from when they started, even though we haven't talked about the debut yet, you can still feel that there's a lot of energy and these guys like playing together. Now, I think Matt, wait a minute, I'm going to get Mark all confused today. But Mark, he wasn't quite what he wanted to do. I think he wanted to be more like along the lines of Firefall. So that's why he left.
The impression I get, yeah.
I mean, this was a rock band. So he wanted to do something a little bit different, and he left. But, Special Situations, mid-tempo rocker, great chorus, Broken Down Man, kind of a bluesy track. And it's got a standout bass part from Jimmy Randall on there. The band is on fire on this track is what I wrote down. Rhythm Kings closing track, driving rhythms, catchy chorus, everything. I think probably my key tracks here are probably, Ready Freddy, of course. Roll Over Me's great. Broken Down Man. And I do love the bass playing on this record. I think it really takes more of a front seat.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's nothing wrong with this record. I'm nitpicking at this point. So that's my number 4.
All right, we're off to a good start, and more about that album later.
Okay. Well, see,
My
like
number
I
four.
said, I'm surprised it wasn't ranked that low before. I
Yeah.
totally revamped things. So
Well, I'm going to go with as my number four. I'm going to go with the third album, which has the most ridiculous album cover. So, for those of you who are a little queasy, careful here. "Jumpin' the Gun" from 1973,
it's
their third
funny.
album. Yeah, I mean that the front cover is fine, but then the back cover, it's like you got this, rather large lady. Yeah, I'm surprised how they got away with that. I have no idea, but hey, whatever. So one thing we haven't mentioned. So Bill Schmick, is that how he
Mhm.
says his name?
I was avoiding saying his name because I
I
knew I would butcher it.
I
Bill
never know how to say it.
Simzik,
Shimzik,
Simzik,
Bill Schmick, Shizmick. I don't know. Yeah,
producer
however,
for the Eagles, does Joe Walsh.
yes, worked with
He
a
does
lot of
these
the
later
country rock
records.
stuff. Yeah, yeah. So he produced the second and third albums, and they have a different sound, right, than the first album and the fourth album for sure. But as you said, this is pretty hard rocking right off the bat. I mean, "I Want to Love You," great song, great song. "To the Island," it's got these cool electric and acoustic guitar textures,
Hmm.
loads of keyboards, kind of like a Doobie Brothers feel, I think, a little bit. "Red Meat," big barnstorming, heavy blues rock. Um, and but they mix like these boogie elements. That's the one thing I'm sure we'll get into quite a bit here, is that there's a lot of boogie going on in their music, as far as like the kind of the guitar chords and the riffs, and then that kind of honky tonk piano,
Yep.
and the lyrics on "Red Meat" just absolutely hilarious. They're just so ridiculous, but it's kind of cool. "Getaway," another big blues rocker, and then towards the end they blend some funk and some Caribbean drums and shit, which is pretty cool. I think that's kind of
I
good.
you know I like that because
Yeah,
they're being a lot more experimental on this record. They're stretching out a little bit,
yeah, for
and
sure.
it kind of adds a little bit to it. I like
Yeah,
it.
I think
Yeah.
so. All these albums are good. I mean, it's just before you get your breakfast, that's kind of like a straight blues, and there you got Matt playing all that slide guitar stuff.
Killer,
Yeah,
absolutely killer for Matt.
it's funny because all the slide guitar that he plays on these first three albums give it like I don't know, like kind of like a non-southerny Allman Brothers,
Hmm.
Foghat, Savoy Brown, that whole thing. He's just
Hmm.
ripping on slide. In fact, he plays more slide guitar than he plays conventional lead guitar on these albums,
Well,
which
that's
is
why they actually brought him in because he was such a killer slide player.
yeah. And I guess
And
his
Jay was blown away by it. He
yeah.
thought, "Man, this guy is it."
And I've read that his like main influence is Ry Cooder, which obviously
I
that's
could
there you
see
have
that.
it, right? What else? "At the Spa" is a great catchy rocker. I love that. "Monkey Music" is really good.
It's
Um,
great.
"Couldn't Love You Better." It's kind of bluesy, kind of pop. Not one of my favorites on here, but pretty good. And "High School Drool," sleazy guitar, sleazy organ, love it. "Neon City," kind of like straight barroom boogie.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'm hit or miss with that kind of stuff. And then you got "Turn the Boy Loose," which is the last track on here, which is a great way to close the album. So for me, this is a really, really solid album. There's a
Hmm.
couple of not so great songs for me, and I think that's why I have it at number four. But what's good on here is really, really good, and I can totally see anybody having this higher because it's really good. There's no bad albums here. So that's my number four. "Jumpin' the Gun" with the big naked lady on the back.
Yeah, that's my number three, and
Okay.
I agree with everything you said. I like this because I do like the sound on this record. It's a little bit more open and airy than the previous record. And I like something that's got a little bit of space around it, and you can hear all the instrumentation really well. And like I said, or like you said, we both said, this is a lot more say words are hard. There's a lot more experimenting on
Experiment.
this record, stretching out some more. They're adding some different instruments. It makes it a little bit more of a better, more fun listening experience. And I'm going to bring that up even later.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think the variety, I think, just helps the band. Uh, I Want to Love You, like I said, straight, catchy, straightforward rocker. Opens the album with great energy. They know how to start an album off. I will give you that. You mentioned all these, but Red Meat, I like that song because it's harder, it's edgier, it's a rocking song. It's just got this grit to it, and I dig that. Before You Get Breakfast, a little bit more of a bluesier track. I think where you spoke about each track perfectly. I really don't have to elaborate more on it, but I do want to mention that Turn the Boy Loose. That is a great song, and it perfectly sets up the next record.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
And a great way to end an album. That's like a great album closer.
I think the sequencing on this record's really good.
Yeah, I agree.
And I love the production. I love everything about. I was talking to Pete before the show how much I love Jo Jo Gunne, and I appreciate him a lot more than when I like first heard him like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's what we always like to do on these exercises. We can revisit stuff or we get turned on to something new. This catalog, at least those original records, those 4 records are phenomenal.
Really,
But
really good.
that's my number 3. I love it. I love it. I love it. But it's got to
And we
go
should
somewhere.
mention these 4 albums came out within a short span of each other.
Oh,
72, 2, and 73, and then the fourth one is 75. So you're looking at 3 years for these 4 albums.
Yeah.
Boom and done. You know?
Yeah. Well, they never had any commercial success.
No, I think they
about
had one song that was a minor hit from the first album, but that's
Yeah.
really about it. But there's other potential like radio fare on these albums, I think, which I'm sure we'll hit on.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tracks on here that if you had a little bit different production, if you had a different arrangement,
Yeah.
maybe a little bit more polished. Because I don't really listen to this. When I hear this, I don't really hear anything that's like a commercial single. Maybe something off the first album. I think there are great tracks that could be refashioned into singles.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it just doesn't seem like these guys are all that commercial. It's great.
Yeah, it is.
But maybe that's why I like it, because it's great, but it's not commercial.
I don't always like commercial stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So I can appreciate it. There's a lot that I like.
I like commercial yacht, but this I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is fine for what it is, right?
This is more commercial than Spirit. This is more accessible than Spirit.
I would agree. Other than those couple of big hits for Spirit, I would say that like from like the God, like there's more commercial stuff on here than anything on Dr. Sardonicus, which is labeled as the big.
I mean, I Got a Line on You's a great. That is a single.
That is a single, yeah. But the rest of it is just.
There's really not anything like that on this record, though. I made some notes. I thought, well, this is obviously the single that I think if you could revamp it, oh yeah, this would be a big hit single.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my number. What was that? Number 3. Okay.
Number 3. All right, my number 3. The album that I settled on my number 3 was the one that moved up and around my ranking the most. And there's part of me that's kicking myself, and I'm like, God, that could be 1 or 2.
Oh God, oh boy.
Because I think it's really good, and sometimes albums later in the catalog don't always work out so well. But I'm going to go number 3, So Where's the Show from 1974. So 74, not 75. So we're talking 2 years for this band. Fourth album. So Mark Andes has left. John Staheley is in on guitar. They don't miss a beat. And strangely enough, this album is more guitar oriented. Less about slide guitar and kind of bluesy boogie stuff and more about just kind of like arena rock riffs, which I'm totally okay with.
We get one track with slide on it.
That's basically it, right? The rest is just straight ahead rock and roll, which is great. Title track opens up. I mean, you can hear there's a little more piano, a little more synths on here, but John's really like showing you what he's got. Less reliance on the slide, obviously. It sounds like BTO to me. I get some BTO feels on some of these songs, which I'm a huge BTO fan. So I'm like, okay, that's really good. I'm Your Shoe, big, heavy rock. Great vocals from Jay. Love the drums. And lots of guitars. I mean, great song. Single Man, that's an interesting song because, like, the first half of the song, I'm kind of like, all right, you're losing me, guys. It's kind of like this bland little ballad. And then all of a sudden, it just kicks in. Big guitar riffs, pounding drums, lead guitar, and the whole second half of the track just finishes with a bang. Awesome. I love that. I love those kind of slow builder tracks that don't kind of keep it sleepy throughout the whole thing and give you some different elements going on. Really good. She Said All Right is really catchy. S&M Boulevard, again, reminds me of big, stomping, power chordy BTO. Love it.
Yep.
Fallen Angel, catchy. Kind of reminds me of early Seeger, early Springsteen, the way the chorus is built up and the use of piano and stuff like that. Big Busted Bombshell from Bermuda. That's kind of like generic boogie. That's okay, but nothing great. But the lyrics are hilarious, which kind of remind me of the Tubes, the way they kind of lay that all out. Pretty cool. And then Into My Life, really good rocker. I think that could have fit on any of Jay's solo albums. I think that's kind of maybe a precursor to what he was going to do in his solo career. It's got that slight little yacht rock feel to it. I really like it. And then Around the World, groovy, good rocker. Yeah, I think this is a really solid album. I've been kicking myself for wanting to put it higher, but I think the other two albums I just maybe like a little bit more. But folks, there's always this perception that when you have these bands that weren't around for that long and they only have a couple albums, that the last one's always the worst. Not in this case, I don't think, but there's no worst here. So
yeah, because this is my number 2. It could easily be my number 1.
right, yeah.
This is the record that I keep returning to and listening to over and over
Really
again.
Yeah.
Okay, for one, this has the best production out of all the records. The
Yes.
guitars are up front.
Yeah.
This is the heaviest album in the catalog. I mean, this is guitar oriented rock, and I know you mentioned BTO. I totally see that, but it just rocks all through it, and the songs are fun to listen to. You never know. The song may start out one way and it may take a complete right turn, and the riffs and the arrangements. Jay sounds great. I love what's the new guitar player was. What was his name?
Oh, John Starr or something, or Staley, John Staley, something like that.
It's so good. You don't miss Matt at all. It's a different band, but by having this new player in, you've got a much harder album. But Where the Show, a strong opener, absolutely phenomenal. I heard that and I went, yes. They still sound passionate. They still sound like they're into it. And I know this is the last record. All the other, I mean, they're probably selling less and less as they keep going.
Yeah.
I'm Your Shoe, kind of experimental, kind of quirky. This album is kind of quirky. It's jammy. It reminds me of Traffic. They do this stretch out in the middle, and I'm thinking, oh, that's like off of Sparks, something like that. I love it. I love it. Single man ballad, great stuff. Jay sounds great. So's the band. She said, all right. Kind of a straightforward rocker, but it's creative. It's wonderful. It's unique. S&M Boulevard kind of reminds me, okay, it sounds like a Cheap Trick song to me before Cheap Trick was out.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, it kind of has that riff. It sounds like something off of Dream Police maybe, or maybe In Color. But the closest thing that I could come up with is a Cheap Trick, because it's like, oh, that sounds like Cheap Trick. Not Cheap Trick, but it's great. Fallen Angel, memorable, catchy. This is one of those songs that I mentioned. If that could be a big hit for somebody, had a bit of a different production, and smoothed out, and in a different setting, it could have been a big hit. I hear it as a hit. And then that Big Busted Bombshell from Bermuda. This is where we get the slide guitar. Yeah, kind of sounds like something off. It sounds like something off of Jumpin' the Gun. And I have no problem with that. But it kind of harks back. It kind of goes backwards, where this is really a rockin' record. I don't have much more to add. I should rank this low, because normally, like you said, the final record from a band doesn't usually get recognition, but they go out on a bang, and I just think it's a joy to listen to, and it sounds wonderful, and put headphones on, it's just fun. And they sound like they're
maybe because they pumped these albums so quickly in succession that they didn't really have any time to stagnate, right? They had the lineup switch, and they just went right back into the studio, banged out another one. It's not like there was 2 or 3 years in between the third album and the fourth album, which I think is where some bands kind of fall apart, right? But this was just boom, 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 boom. Let's get these records out.
And I can't remember. Did Bill produce this one too?
No, this was self-produced by the band along with John Stronach.
Okay, so he did work with REO. The Cow album cover, with the REO. He did that, which I'm not we're talking REO for a second. I'm not a great big fan of that production of that record. It sounds kind of... It's a great record. Yeah. Well, don't get me started on REO. I love REO. I really do. I like the production. I like what he did on this record way better than the REO production. So it all depends. But this is a little bit before. This is like 3 years before that.
Well, so. I'm assuming the REO album was produced somewhere in the upper Midwest, and maybe like a lesser studio, because this was recorded at the record plant in Sausalito.
Well, Record
That's a
Plant
great
sounds great.
studio. That's probably why, I would assume.
Oh, it's yeah, that's true. Think about Aria or on a tangent. Maybe, down in their further in their career, the record company's probably not giving them as much money. They want to hit. Back in that REO career, they were threatening them. If you guys don't come up with something, because Nine Lives really didn't do anything. A great record.
Oh
I
yeah,
love that record.
yeah,
Love it. But they were going, hey, we need something or you're done. Well, they came through with High Infidelity, but
yeah. And even
they threw,
Tuna Piano, right?
yeah.
Was pretty good. It was a pretty decent seller for them. It was not high fidelity level, but that was probably like they had to have that because you got to wonder if they didn't at least have that, would they have been given the opportunity for high fidelity? I don't know.
I don't know, but Tuna Fish is great because they
Awesome.
self-produced it.
Yeah.
It's great. It sounds like it's the way they're supposed to sound.
Yeah. Yeah. For
There
sure.
you go, ladies and gentlemen. You just got a mini REO Speedwagon show out of Jo Jo Gunne.
That's right. Right. Two totally unrelated
It's
bands.
like it's like a twofer.
There you go.
But there you go. But I love all that. Well, some people, Martin does not care for REO, but I like it.
No, I know that. I know that.
We don't bring
All right. You ready for
REO
my
up.
number two?
All right, Pete, I'm
My
ready.
number two, I'm going to go with the debut, Jo Jo Gunne,
Oh,
1972. Really great
see, I
album.
knew this ranking was going to be all
Yeah,
over. It's all
we're
different.
not. Yeah, we're totally different, but that's okay. I mean, it's a really good album. Run, Run, Run. To me, I listened to it. I'm like, okay, there's a little Status Quo there. There's a little early
Yep.
Wishbone Ash there. I totally dig it. Bluesy, boogie, lots of fun, great chorus, love it. Shake That Fat, bluesy hard rocker, great slide guitar on that. I mean, Babylon is also really cool, more atmospheric, nice guitar layers, great vocals. It's got kind of like a southern rock flair to it. I don't know whether I'm attributing that just to the slide guitar, but there's some southern rock stuff going on.
Yeah.
These albums, obviously, these guys aren't from the South, but I don't know what it is. They kind of mix some stuff in there. I love I Make Love. That might be my favorite on the album. Might be one of my favorites from the guitar. I wish it was on the whole catalog. I wish it was longer. That might have been a good single for them. It's just rocking. It's catchy. I like that quite a bit. Barstow Blue Eyes. It's a little bit of that generic boogie stuff, which kind of I can take or leave, whatever. But 99 Days, really good. Raunchy vocals, great slide. Academy Award. So this is interesting. That's the longest song on the album, and it's just under 5 minutes. But it's also one of the heaviest on the album. It's just got great ensemble playing. The way it's whole arranged is just really, really good. And it kind of reminds me of like a heavier Savoy Brown.
You know what I wrote? I wrote, this is probably the most quote unquote spirit type song on the album.
Yes, I had that coming up in my. It said it reminds me of a heavier Savoy Brown as well as Blood Rock and maybe even Spirit.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree. And you figured on the first album we were going to get a little bit of that. I don't really get much Spirit influence going forward, but there's a little bit on here. Take It Easy is good, slow, bluesy, hard rock. Reminds me of Humble Pine spots. Great lead guitar. And weird, I think that Flying Home, this is the one thing the rest of the albums don't fall into the trap of. I'm not a big fan of ending an album on a mellow kind of ballady tune, and Flying Home for me is kind of that. It's like, that should have been like a little further up in the track list, and one of the bangers should have been the end because all the other albums have really great closers except for this one. But yeah, I could see anybody. Obviously, Grant is have this at number one. It's just a very realized album right off the bat.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that track "Fly Home," kind of like I looked at that track as if you mixed Blind Faith, maybe a little bit of Grateful Dead.
Yeah, I can see that.
And just kind of sprinkle it a little bit on top. That's what you got.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree 100%. Fly Home should not be the closer. You should have something anthemic or something that's hard hitting to make you go, wow. Hardly wait for that next record. So maybe the sequencing on here could be tweaked a bit. But yeah. You anything more to add? Or you good? Okay. Well, obviously my number one's Jo Jo Gunne. Now, the thing is, the debut album, they sound hungry, they sound fresh, they sound new. They got Matt in the band playing guitar. They got Curly Smith, and they just went, oh my God, Curly is our guy.
He's really good. Yeah, we haven't talked about him a lot, but he's really good.
Are you familiar with Gary Myrick?
No.
There's another. We'll add that to your list. All right. There's a Gary Myrick. He used to. He's a guitar player from Texas. He played guitar on John Waite's No Brakes album.
Okay.
He had a band, new wave band in the early '80s called Gary Myrick and the Figures. Had a track, She Talks in Stereo, that was on the Valley Girl soundtrack. Anyway, they were one of those bands back in the early '80s on this whole strip, hanging out with the Knack, and that whole scene. They put an album. He had an EP called Language. That's not the Figures, but just Gary Myrick. You might want to check this out because you might dig it. He's a really great guitar player, but he did the EP and it's basically a collaborate. It's just him. It's Gary Myrick. CD got a reissue on Wounded Bird, and basically the EP became an album because there's so much that they had recorded. I think it was on. What label were they on? Epic.
Okay.
He ended up putting an EP out, but there was an album worth of material. Now, the other players on this album, it's basically Gary Myrick, Jay Ferguson, and Curly Smith. We're talking 1983.
Wow.
If anybody's into Spirit, you like these guys, you like Jay, check out Gary Myrick Language, 1983. And it's basically Gary with two of these guys. And it doesn't sound like this. It totally sounds like a Gary Myrick record, but I highly recommend it. But Curly's on it. It's just great. Now I went on another tangent, and I don't know where I was going.
I think you were halfway through the tracks on this album.
Okay. Come in, Grant. Come in. All right. So this record, I think it's great. I think this encapsulates what Jo Jo Gunne is. It's got air around it. They sound hungry. They sound like they're having a blast. You can hear it through the recording. The musicianship is top notch. I love this record. Run, Run, Run. It was a top 40 single. It's infectious. It's memorable. It's the standout track from the record. It should open the album. I totally get it. Shake the Fat, kind of funky. One of the highlights is kind of a boogie rock kind of influence. This has nothing to do with anything, but when I hear it, for some reason in my monkey brain, I hear Sly and the Family Stone.
Really?
I don't know why. Maybe it might be the vocals in it. It's kind of, I don't know. It's kind of soulful, funky kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know why it does that. Babylon, slower, bluesy. It's good. It's fine. I Make Love. I wrote on here because I know you like that track. I think it's phenomenal. That would have been a better record to close it with. Straightforward rocker. Jay Ferguson on here really sounds great, and he sounds powerful. It's one of the heavier tracks. Great piano. Killer. I want to mention Matt again. I know I sound like a Matt fanboy. Great guitar from Matt on this record, on this song. I like it. I don't really have much. I mean, Fly Home Again. I wrote, like I said, Blind Faith, The Dead. Take It Easy. Kind of a laid back track. Rounds out the album nicely. But I don't think it's a closer. It's got some nice wah guitar on it, which I think is pretty cool. And the piano is atmospheric. I like it. I like the whole record. There's not anything weak for me on it. I mean, it's always going to be the number one, I think. And most people, when you're going to rank them. Now, most people aren't going to rank the last album as number one, but God, I love that record. I could put it at number one.
Sure. I can make the argument. I could. I thought about it.
I think a lot of people look at it. Well, that's not the original band. We've lost two members. We have two replacements. It's not. Jo Jo Gunne was really the first album when you had Mark on it. I don't know about that, but
they did not lose anything when he left, which is the cool part of it.
No, there's nothing weak on it. So
no.
So there you go.
Process of elimination, my number one is Bite Down Hard, which of course, right?
Is my number four.
Number four, right? So second album produced by Bill, however he says his name. And, again, like Grant mentioned, Mark leaves the band. So here they have to find a new bass player, and they got a pretty terrific bass player. because Jimmy Randall is like, and he's up front in the mix throughout this whole album,
Yeah.
which is just
Mhm.
absolutely great. Ready Freddy is a great opener. I love the big guitar riffs. I love the big bass riffs. Just a good, rowdy, hard rocker to open up the album. That's how you open up an album.
Yeah.
Roll Over Me, memorable. Got all of a sudden you see hearing some synthesizers appearing in their music from time to time because they're more kind of like a piano organ type of band. But all of a sudden, and this is '73, right? So the synthesizer
Yeah.
was just starting to show up in a lot of progressive rock for sure and other regular rock music. 60 minutes, kind of bluesy, kind of soulful, a lot of good slide guitar and piano. Rock Around the Cymbal is great. I mean, to me, it sounds a little bit like Steppenwolf. Got a little fog hat in there. Great stuff. Great
I
vocals.
didn't mention it, but the vocals on here are kind of Queen-like. Now, kinda,
Kind of.
but they're real thick and very textured and very layered. Yeah.
I think the way they're produced,
Yeah.
which is really good because these guys really put a lot of work into the backing vocals. Even if Jay is doing most of it, just really, really well done. Take Me Down Easy is really accessible, but it also rocks a lot. I mean, just killer chorus. Another one of my favorite songs from the band, and I could totally see that being like a single. That's a really good one. Yeah, everything's good on here. Curly's drums is just great. Rhoda is just a great closer. That's just kind of bluesy hard rock, and just the guitar tone is awesome. It's a really strong album. Like I said, it's my favorite of the four, but I could see this switching at any point in time because they're just filled with really good songs, and there's no album it's like, all right, they got a couple of highlights and the rest is kind of weak. That's not this catalog. It's like, yeah, you may have one or two or three tracks that aren't quite as good as the others, but every album is just really, really solid and well put together. So yeah.
Yeah, because look, my number 4 is your number 1, but they could switch.
We could switch. Yeah, they're all really good. They're all really good. And obviously it's very easy to get because Rhino put out this wonderful double disc set, which has all 4 albums on there. So you can get it all in one shot and just totally enjoy it. And there's loads of liner notes on here about the band and the albums and whatnot. So that's the way to do it right here.
Yeah, yeah. Back in the day, Rhino put it out on Rhino Handmade, and that was the only way you could get it. It never think about this. Of course, they never really sold anything.
Yeah.
And it took a long time for that to come out, and then it went out of print because the Rhino Handmade stuff, they only pressed like 5,000 copies.
Sleep and they're gone, right?
Then they started to license it to collectors. I think Collector's Choice put it out, or Wounded Bird, one of the two. And it's the same mastering as the Rhino Handmade. And I'm thinking, I've got that same collection that you just held up, and I think it's all the same mastering. I think all the records sound good. So.
Yeah, they do. They do. It's very affordable, and like I said, great way to get the whole first 4 albums of the catalog.
Is that Edsel Rhino or is that BGO? I can't remember who put that.
Let's see. This is Demon Music Group. Rhino. Oh no, Edsel. Edsel's on here.
Edsel.
As well.
All right.
Yeah, Rhino Edsel. They always do quality stuff, so it's.
Oh yeah.
I love this reissues, especially some of this more obscure stuff which you can't really get anywhere else. So yeah, it's just great stuff. So so now that we've confused everybody, because well, where's the first place to start? Because their ranking was all different. Yeah, start anywhere here. They're all really good.
It doesn't matter.
Go in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, or go backwards. It doesn't really matter. And these albums are not long, right? They're all like 35, 40 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
So you can get through these fairly quickly, but I think you'll find there's a lot to love here, and it'll make you want to go out and get this catalog. So all you Spirit fans, definitely check into these guys. Different beasts, but still really, really good.
Yep. So there you go.
So, Grant, what's coming up over at the Warehouse and the Contrarians?
Oh, geez. Contrarians, I always like to promote the Wednesday live show. We will be back next week. I'm not sure what I do know what the topic is, but I can't think of it. But Martin's back. He's back from his meetings and everything, and he's back in the fold. So Martin will be back. We'll be back on Wednesday in the Warehouse. I had Jon Snow on my channel, and we just did the ranking of the band The Alarm, which is kind of an alternative new wave band from the early 80s. That was a fun show. Always stuff coming up. I don't know. That's what's coming up. That's what's out now. So
all right.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. In fact, stay tuned for next Saturday, because Grant and I are going to rank a band that you guys have asked for quite a bit, a band that I never even heard of until Grant brought it to my attention, The Hunt. 3 albums, small catalog. So we're going to be doing that a week from today on ranking the albums on Sunday. And so stay tuned for that. Pretty cool band. Kind of another one of those bands that kind of float between a couple genres, right? They're kind of this, but they're not. They're kind of that. They're kind of not. Really good stuff. So stay tuned for that. Also, Grant and I will be getting back together with the guys of the What Is It crew. So Brendan Snyder and Scott Lade from the Prog Corner. We're going to be doing a whole show talking about what the hell is this thing called Steely Dan. That's coming up next weekend as well. So stay tuned for that. We got In the Proxy coming up Tuesday night. Talking about Italian prog classics. We got another album war with 5 Italian prog classics and all sorts of other stuff this week. So till then, visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Thank you all for staying here with me while I'm struggling with the flu, whatever the hell it is I got. I think I got a little invigorated halfway through this night. As long as you take it out of your mind, you can kind of soldier on. If you sit there, oh, woe is me, I feel like shit.
You start talking music, Pete perks up.
I perk up, right? That's the gift of music will heal all ailments, right? That's just the way it goes. So this episode is a testament to that. Thank you, Grant, for mentioning that. So we'll see you all soon. Here are more stuff. I'm Pete Pardo for Grant Arthur. Have a good rest of the weekend, everybody. We'll see you soon.
See ya.
Bye-bye.